to wake up to what's going on. We're at war here.
We're the most diverse country in the world. What do we need a diversity program on visas?
This NYPD officer is being hailed as a hero for stopping this terrorist. And without brave men and women like that in uniform, this attack could have been much worse.
To New Yorkers, be New Yorkers and live your life.
We don't need politicians who will tell us to get used to it. We need politicians that'll tell us they're going to fight it.
Right to a Fox News alert now. News of the deadliest New York attack since 9/11 is coming in fast and furious. Overnight, authorities conducting several raids, desperately searching for clues in the ISIS-inspired plot.
A terrorist who was living in New Jersey in an apartment building in Paterson rented a Home Depot flatbed truck in Passaic County, New Jersey, then drove about 20 miles into Manhattan, went across the George Washington Bridge down the West Side Highway, and plowed into a crowd on a very busy bike path, deliberately running down innocent people before crashing into a school bus carrying children 1 mile after he had started.
8 people are now dead and at least 11 are hurt. The attacker is a native of Uzbekistan. He was shot by police in the abdomen and is now in custody.
You know, Rob Schmidt is live outside the suspect's mosque in Paterson, New Jersey. He's got brand new information on this. Hey, Rob.
Hey guys, good morning. We're outside the Omar Mosque here in Paterson, just about 15, 20 miles outside the city. And we're understanding that the suspect attended this mosque. He actually lived not even 100 feet away in an apartment building that was just off the property of this mosque. This is a very big Middle Eastern community here in Paterson, New Jersey. The mosque, the suspect's apartment where he lived with his wife and 2 kids, as well as other residences and also some storefronts in this immediate area, have been raided overnight by police, by federal authorities as they search for clues onto exactly how this happened and if he was radicalized in this neighborhood, if he was radicalized in this mosque. Big questions there. The NYPD has been watching this mosque as well as several other mosques the NYPD has had to keep an eye on after 2001. They've been watching this one behind me for 12 years now, since 2005. 29-year-old Sayfullo Saipov, as you just said, is from Uzbekistan. He came here on a visa, a diversity visa, back in 2010. So he's been in country for about 7 years now. And it appears that he spent the majority of that time in Florida. And what we are hearing, at least from one person that went to his mosque, is that he had only been here for a few months. And so that raises a question of whether or not this man moved from Florida up into the general New York City area and into New Jersey simply to commit an attack on New York City. We don't know right now, but it could lead that direction. And of course, there's going to be a lot of questions for the people that attend this mosque about whether or not they knew him. One person we spoke to earlier said that nobody in the mosque really recognized him, recognized his picture, knew him because he had not been here for very long. So that remains to be seen. The suspect, rented that Home Depot truck right down the street in Passaic, left his van there. That's also being scoured by police this morning. Took that truck into the city, jumped on the West Side Highway, jumped up onto a bike path, plowed over 8 people, killing them, and nearly a dozen others, injuring them, putting them in the hospital. We have some people in critical condition this morning. Just a terrible story. And last night, Congressman Michael McCaul actually unveiled a very interesting detail to this, which is that there was a very big hint that this could happen that was found back in August. Listen to this.
We saw a picture of a cell phone at the scene of where this happened a month ago, or around August time frame, with an ISIS logo, sort of predicting that this may happen. And I think investigators are looking at that photo to find out it was posted on the website of ISIS in August. And so that's something that investigators are looking at right now in terms of, are there other people involved?
And that kind of just a tease of things to come, they think, as they begin this investigation into this. Saipov out of the operating room. We do know that he screamed Allahu Akbar, God is great, in Arabic, right after he jumped out of his truck after smashing into a school bus. And also they found 2 letters that show his allegiance to ISIS. They'll be questioning him pretty hard today, I would imagine, guys. We'll send it back to you.
No kidding. All right, Rob, thank you very much.
Thank you, Rob.
Let's go down to Washington. Dr. Sebastian Gorka, former Deputy Assistant to the President and Chief Strategist for Make America Great Again Coalition. Coalition, joins us live from the D.C. Bureau. Dr. Gorka, what we know about the suspect, we know a lot. We know that, as Rob just said, he's 29 years old. He's from Uzbekistan, came in on a diversity visa. He was a commercial driver, and then he was an Uber driver until yesterday. They just fired him. And he had a couple of things in the cab of the rental truck that suggested he had pledged allegiance to ISIS. And I read one account where apparently he had a picture of an ISIS flag. Where would you like to start in describing what happened?
Well, the sad truth is what happened yesterday should not be a surprise to anybody, because this is the new mode of attack of ISIS. Al-Qaeda started talking about this in their magazine Inspire years ago. They actually had a photograph of an F-150 Ford pickup truck and an article on how you use a vehicle like that to mow down the infidel. Then ISIS started to propagate this mode of attack in their publications, including Dabiq. And then we saw it happen all over Europe, whether it's in Nice, in France, whether it's in Germany, whether it's on that bridge in London, in the UK. They took this very, very simple yet effective mode of irregular attack to the heart of the infidel as they see it. And yesterday, this type of attack came to the streets of Manhattan within blocks, for the third instance, within blocks from the World Trade Center.
What makes them, I know you're a terrorism expert, what makes them do something like this? I know this is radical extremism. Why do they believe that their God wants them to do something like this?
Well, there are passages, many passages in the Quran that talk about the need to use violence, to use physical jihad against the infidel. We know that the original caliphate wasn't propagated by peaceful missionary work into the Hijaz, into North Africa, into Spain. It was done in many cases by the use of force. Muhammad wasn't just a prophet, according to Islam. Muhammad was a military leader. The Quran, the Hadith, the historic stories that are recounted in Islamic history talk of whole tribes being decimated, not just infidels, but Muslims who disagreed with Muhammad, Jewish tribes also being decimated. So this is part and parcel of a history that the Salafists, the jihadists, use to justify their violence, because their argument is the caliphate, the theocratic empire of Islam, must span the whole world, and infidels are in the way of that empire being recreated.
You know, a couple of things. Salafist Islamists is a form of Sunni Islam, not Shia Islam that you find now running Iraq and running Iran. So would you think that it would be a good opportunity for the Uzbek leaders, for the Saudis, for Qatar, these other Sunni-led nations, to condemn this and make it clear that when you greeted President Trump months ago and said we're going to renounce terror, that we are on board and just as outraged as you? Would you hope to hear that today?
Yeah, I think the president's speech, President Trump's speech in Riyadh, was a game changer. I had one female from the region, an Arab, tell me after he made that speech to more than 50 Arab and Muslim heads of state, she said to me, that's the speech we, so the people of the region, have been waiting for 16 years. The president called out those leaders. He gave them tough love. He said, quote, you have to rid your communities, you have to rid your houses of worship of the extremists, of the terrorists.
Right.
Afterwards, they blockaded, they took action against Qatar, the country of greatest concern when it comes to promoting this kind of ideology. So yes, this would be prime time, Brian, prime time for them to say, we condemn all of this, and for them to say, this doesn't represent their Islam. That would be very helpful.
So, Dr. Gorka, people this morning are waking up and they're trying to figure out, how did this terrorist get into the United States of America? He came in legally. He came in through the diversity visa program back in 1990, when the 1990 Immigration Act was going through Congress. Turns out Chuck Schumer attached his bill, this diversity visa program, to this, which brings in 50,000 visas from a variety of countries, some with known terrorist entities as well, Do we, and I know that your former boss, the President of the United States, Donald Trump, has made it very clear he wants to get rid of this program. Given the fact what happened yesterday here in New York City happened, does he have a stronger case for getting rid of it?
Sadly, this event just reinforces all the efforts the president has made with regards to reforming immigration, the extreme vetting, looking at why and how we choose people to come into this country. And by the constitutional writ of this nation, it is his prerogative. It is the president's prerogative to decide upon what metrics we measure immigration to this country. And the idea that, I mean, we are the most diverse nation the world has ever seen.
We don't need a lottery.
We don't need, exactly. The idea that we're just going to, if you've got a high school diploma and 2 years of work experience, we can roll a dice and you can come into America and it's not based upon whether or not you are strengthening the nation. That has to end. That's insanity. Right. That's using political correctness in a way that is potentially suicidal for our security.
What's the president going to do? What's the next step? How will he enforce the merit-based system that he wants to do and then get rid of this plan?
Well, look, there are many models out there, and look at Australia, look at New Zealand. They have incredibly stringent immigration requirements. It's based upon education. It's based upon skill set. There's a whole slew of yardsticks you have to meet. And if you don't meet them, you don't get to come in. You don't play bingo and give the guy a green card. So, you know, there are many things that we could look at. And I know the president is dedicated to making sure only people who do not threaten America are allowed in if they add to the nation.
Dr. Gorka, remember, the first conflict the president had with the Australian leader is he called him up and says, wait a second, we're supposed to take refugees that you won't let in your country into our country? This is the dumbest deal ever. And that was the readout of that illegally leaked exchange. And we had to take those refugees. So these other countries are allowed to have standards, but we have to have a lottery system. And I just hope there'll be a Democrat and Republican behind the microphone today saying it's time to end this program in light of the reality of the war on terror that we're fighting.
No more political correctness. Political correctness can kill people. We know in San Bernardino that the neighbors of the killers saw suspicious activity but refused to report it because they were afraid of being called racists or Islamophobes. Political correctness can get people killed. It cannot be applied to immigration and should not be applied to policing either. So this is what the president has been doing since January the 20th, and unfortunately this tragedy strengthens his hand.
You know, unfortunately as well, it turns out, according to our own Rob Schmidt, who is on location there in Paterson, New Jersey, the suspect's mosque has been under surveillance by New York City police, it sounds like, since 2005. And in fact, this particular terrorist, who has no, substantial criminal history, apparently was on the Fed's radar in an unrelated investigation. It's unclear whether they were investigating a friend or family or something like that. But nonetheless, it's one of those things, they were over there, they were looking at the mosque, and now does something else need to happen regarding surveillance of places like that? Because, the New York City mayor has said very clearly he wants to get rid of it.
Yeah, that has to end. So Mayor de Blasio injecting politics into the safety of New Yorkers or Americans, that day is gone. I'm sorry, people's blood is on the streets and we have to think rationally. This type of attack, we love technology. We are the most technology-heavy intelligence community in the world. But at the end of the day, this kind of attack will be prevented not by satellites, not by phone intercepts, but by that human asset, that covert informant, that agent inside the mosque, inside that community, who sees the signs beforehand and can tip off the authorities to bring that person in. If you pull back our human intelligence capabilities, it's the eyes and ears of our law enforcement, and we become blind. So I ideally hope the mayor and Governor Cuomo will rethink their politically motivated attitude to the safety of all Americans.
All right.
Dr. Gorka, thank you very much. Let's bring in Navy SEAL Team 6, who killed Osama bin Laden, Rob O'Neill, and Fox News contributor. Thanks for being with us,
Good
Rob.
morning, Ainsley. Good morning, Steve.
What was your reaction?
This is going to happen. I knew this would happen. All you need now is, again, this proves it's not the weapon, it's the intent. And they've been putting out, they being ISIS, how to do this, how to get a truck. He followed every guideline. It's get a large vehicle, a flatbed truck, or a lorry, and then have an ISIS flag or a depiction of an ISIS flag in the vehicle. Have a note talking about ISIS, which he did, and then have a knife so you can, once you run as many people over and are forced to stop, you can inflict as much damage until the police get there. And I think the reason he had the 2 fake guns is so that he could be martyred. He doesn't have access to a suicide vest, thank goodness. And once he has a weapon in his hand, he gets shot by the police, which he did, thank goodness. He's in critical, but he was shot in the abdomen, and now maybe he can be interrogated to see what happened. And it's actually better for him to be alive so we can find out what and why. But this is not a lone wolf. You get radicalized somehow, and it's interesting to find out where this happened.
It sounds like you're describing he had a list of things he was supposed to do, and he went one by one.
They did. That's what ISIS puts on the website.
Can I ask you a dumb question?
Absolutely.
Okay, so the guy parks a Toyota Sienna minivan at the Home Depot in Passaic, then walks in and rents another vehicle and then uses that. Why didn't he just use his own minivan?
I think there's more weight, more force, more speed with that much
bigger killing machine.
Yeah, exactly, that's what it is, and that's what they call them. The best mowing machine. ISIS would call it that, to mow people down, and that's that he wanted a bigger truck. It worked out, and there's a lot of indicators there, because that specific spot, there was a picture taken of that and put on a website with an ISIS flag on that picture. So it's almost dangerous, because does this mean this is where we want you to attack, or when we attack here, another attack? That means we want you to launch it. And this is, the marathons in New York, so that's stuff you need to watch out for. Is this a sign? Are they communicating through different means?
Yeah, I know you fought for our country all over the world. What do you know about Uzbekistan?
Well, we would run into Uzbeks over in Afghanistan, and whenever we'd run into foreign fighters, be it Arabs or Uzbeks or Chechens, those people are really, really serious, and they're there for one reason. They're there to fight the jihad for sure. So we'd run into them a lot. We know about the Islamic movement of Uzbekistan. It's pledged its allegiance to ISIS. They're very serious jihadis. We've like the Tsarnaev brothers up in Boston. Those are Chechens. So anytime you run into people like that with that ideology, and it's just proof too. That's not the Middle East. So we're not. This isn't a. It's not a war against Arabs. This is a war against radicalized Islam, wherever they are, be it Africa, be it Asia, be it the Middle East. It's that version. It's not the Arabs.
Do you think it's time to get Special Forces training with our officers? This 28-year-old was amazing, right? Pete's at his gun. He's out of school. He gets in. He's able to shoot this guy in the street. Do you think it's time to infiltrate some Special Forces training with our officers? Because after all, they're on the front lines now.
I think we are. And I think you'll notice just with some of the tactical gear you'll see a lot of these guys wearing, a lot of the response teams, especially here in New York up at Times Square, they have a lot of the training, but absolutely we need to, because this is, I don't want to get into what I could see people doing just with the look at all the people around here walking around New York with their head in their phone. They're not paying attention. What happens if an active shooter is in an elevated position? No, he can be there for hours. So we do need to have people with the sniper training, especially the hostage rescue and how to get into a house quickly. But yeah, if it's not happening, which I know it is, it should be happening for sure.
Sure. We live just a couple of miles from Paterson, New Jersey, and I remember back in 2001, it turns out one of the apartments used by some of the terrorists for all 4 flights, they would get together at that apartment in that town.
We're going to need the help here. They need to go to the Omar Mosque in Paterson, New Jersey, talk to the imam. I mean, there were people that went to this mosque that said this guy, he would never say good morning, he would never say good afternoon, and he would never want his picture taken. That's just something that's,
this killer right
here. And you need to talk to those people. We need help from the vast majority of Muslims who are moderate, that don't want their religion being associated.
But here's the thing: if I say that to a cop, hey, there's a Muslim guy around the block that looks sullen, stoic, and I see him arguing at the supermarket all the time. Really, sir? I think you have a little bit of a problem with the Muslim community.
That's exactly right.
And then I say, okay, fine, you're on your own.
And that happened in San Bernardino too. I mean, they do say, see something, say something, but now it's see something, make sure it's politically correct, and which is nonsense. And we all need to get together. We had men from Argentina that were killed, someone from Belgium that was killed here. They don't care if you're American. You're not part of their. They're going to kill anyone, and that's where you need to realize it doesn't matter which side of the aisle you're on. The jihadis want to kill us all.
How does this affect our efforts overseas to fight ISIS?
Well, I mean, hopefully this would. a lot of this radicalization comes from overseas, especially ungoverned nations where, like Libya, like Syria, pretty much, Iraq, because we left too soon, Niger. We need to have special forces overseas to stop this morphing of the ideology. So hopefully people can realize that we're not just imperialists. We're actually trying to protect the homeland. That's what we're actually doing. Sure. And again, you need to get out of the party politics of everything and get into the realization that there's a jihad being fought and only one side's really fighting it.
Right, but for years people have said we've got to stop them over there before they come over here.
That's true.
They're here.
They're here, and they've been here, and that's true. And part of the issue with the Islamic State falling in Iraq and Syria is now the foreign fighters are going somewhere else, and because they're calling for revenge because they have nothing else to do, and we've proven they can't beat us, and our coalition's on the ground. So the people that are sympathetic, like the guy yesterday, are going to find out that this, unfortunately, this is going to happen more, and it needs to be one with human intelligence.
All right, Rob O'Neill.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ainsley. Thanks, Brian.
All right. Meanwhile, President Trump calling for stronger extreme vetting here at home. But are we doing all we can to fight terror around the world? Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer has been thinking about that, and he joins us live next.
Details about the innocent victims of the New York City terror attack.
8 people were killed when the suspect plowed through a bike path in the name of ISIS. Garrett Tenney is live from the murder scene in Lower Manhattan, not far from the World Trade Center site. Garrett?
Well, Stephen Ainsley, good morning to you. This was the trip of a lifetime for one group of friends that ended in heartbreak and tragedy. Argentina's foreign ministry confirms that 5 of the 8 people who were killed in this attack were from that country, and that they were here on celebrating a 30-year graduation reunion from high school. These friends go back years, and they came here to celebrate this event together. You can see here in this picture that they took a picture. This is from the Argentine newspaper, La Nación, and it shows the group posing for a photo together before boarding their flight. And on their shirts, it translates there to freedom. Now, that is what they came here for, and sadly, 5 of that group are now dead. At least one other is injured. And along with him, the paper reports that the group had rented bikes earlier in the day and were going along that bike path. Then they got off the bikes, they were walking along the path, and that is when this driver began to drive a mile down this bike path, plowing through anyone that he came across, and that is when he struck this group. One man remains in the hospital. We're told he is in critical condition. In addition to them, we know of at least one person from Belgium that was killed and several others from Belgium that were injured, along with 2 teachers and 2 students who were in that bus that this man crashed into during yesterday's attack. Several of the victims still remain hospitalized in critical condition, and our thoughts and prayers are with them. Stephen Ainsley.
All right, Garrett. Thank you very much. Brian, down to you.
25 minutes now after the hour. Following yesterday's attack, President Trump tweeted this: "I just ordered Homeland Security to step up our already extreme vetting program. Being politically correct is fine, but not for this." The big question now, are we doing all we can to fight terror around the world? Here to weigh in is former U.S. Army trained, CIA trained, Senate intelligence operative, Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer. Tony, listen. The president's always said this. Judges keep stopping him from doing this. How do you win over judges appointed by another party who see nothing but party politics in this?
Well, they got to rein themselves in. Look, we are here, Brian, precisely because of the neglect, political neglect of the last administration, Senator Chuck Schumer helping import Europe's problems. We don't want that. President Trump is going in the right direction, and he wants to do things which are necessary to screen properly anybody who wants to come here. It's not our job to bring the world here. Our job is to protect the American people, and President Trump understands it.
Right.
But let's look at the bigger picture.
Yep.
General Dunford, the chairman of Joint Chiefs, has put something called the buy, with, and force through strategy in place, which is actually being very effective. The idea is building capacity of our allies to do the hard work of defeating ISIS globally. We've got folks in Niger, as you know. We're doing this in Afghanistan, Yemen, all these places which are necessary to keep them there and defeat them. We've defeated them in Iraq and Syria. We have to continue the global pressure. More closely, we have to actually do the hard work of espionage. As mentioned by several of the folks prior to me, you need to penetrate the networks. And frankly, you do that by the old-fashioned spying game, espionage. You got to get people inside the network to defeat the network. And then lastly, we got to defeat the message. Not only do we do these hard things, we actually enhance the intelligence capability of local law enforcement, but then strategically work with our allies such as President al-Sisi in Egypt, other folks in England who are essentially members of the Muslim faith who wish to help us reform the faith to push violence out of it. And that's not an easy thing. We can't do it, but we can help those who want to do that.
We need the imams in the mosques to say, listen, I got a little problem with this guy. Keep an eye on him. That would be the path. But in the big picture, Colonel, would you say this is a harder scenario? Let's say he came in here as a guy who wanted to check out America, and then once he got here, disenchanted or lured in by the internet, he becomes radicalized. That's a lot different. He might have been a good guy at 26 years old, but by the time he's 31 and ISIS puts out these alluring messages on YouTube and whatever, then he gets radicalized. A little bit more of a challenge, right?
Well, we don't know. I mean, look, your scenario is plausible, but we don't know because we didn't vet the guy beforehand, Brian. I mean, his name itself is Sword of Allah. That's the clue. So, you know, we need to be. His first name is the Sword of Allah. So that's not like Joe. And I think that was a clue to where he came from. So we have to look at every aspect of every individual to make sure that we're not importing Europe's terror problem. Now, regarding the scenario, the guy he goes through the vetting, whatever that may be. I think there was pretty much nothing in the previous administration. A questionnaire asking him, are you a terrorist or not? No. Okay, there you go. But with that said, he gets here, he starts involving himself in life. If we detect something in the process of him going to the mosque, doing things around the community, he had to recon this location, Brian. There was a picture of this location by ISIS put up on their website back in August. There is attack profiles. This vehicle method by ISIS is something that ISIS is now using as a routine vector for attacks. So I would argue that there's going to be attack indicators well in advance of anybody doing this. And this is where, again, we have to be inside of their network, be inside of their social media, looking for indicators. And I'm sorry, the Amish aren't doing this. We need to look where the threat is and not pretend that we can be politically correct and look at, Grandma Moses from Michigan and scrutinize her to the same level of someone from Uzbekistan. It's just not practical. We know where the threat is. We have to focus where the threat is going to come from.
Lawmakers have to envision those 8 people that lost their lives and others struggling to keep them as their family members and react accordingly. Don't be dispassionate and say, I've never been to New York or I never ride a bike. It's got to be it's got to be personal. Got to pretend it's your family. And then how would you react? Colonel, thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me, Brian.
All right, coming up straight ahead, a flaw with an immigration program can help terrorists who can stay under the radar here at home. Former Congressman Jason Chaffetz here to explain. And while you were sleeping, police swarming. Yep, they were swarming the community where the New York City terrorist suspect lives in New Jersey. We're live outside his mosque. Next. That Rob Schmidt's in front of right now is just around the block from when the suspected terrorist lived.
Actually, there's Rob right now live in Paterson, New Jersey. Rob, the suspect's mosque is behind you, and his apartment at 168 Genesee Avenue is just, 100 feet away?
Not even. The properties actually butt up against one another. I'll show you the mosque here real quick. Here's the mosque, the green awning, and then if you look right over these trees here, you can see some brick. Just barely see the roof there. That's the suspect's apartment building where we understand he lives, or lived, I should say. He's going to be in jail here pretty soon with his wife and kids. This is in Paterson, New Jersey, about 15, 20 miles outside of the city. And we understand that the mosque here, that apartment complex, other apartments in the area and storefronts in the area were raided and began to get looked into overnight by police and federal authorities as they begin the investigation into this case. 29-year-old Sayfullo Saipov is the suspect here. Let's pull up his picture. This from a mugshot back in 2016 from Uzbekistan here in the United States on a diversity visa. The United States extending its arm to other countries in the world, and that was taken advantage of in this case. He went to Florida first, may only have been in New Jersey for a short period of time, according to somebody that also goes to his mosque. He rented that truck right down the street in Passaic, New Jersey, drove into the city, committed this horrible crime, screaming Allahu Akbar as he got out of the truck after smashing into a school bus. They found a couple of letters in the truck that showed his devotion to ISIS and his allegiance to ISIS. And let's listen to some sound here from a person that goes to this mosque as well, talking about whether or not they knew who this suspect is.
He lived here for 3 months, and obviously, like, I've asked a lot of people here. No one knows him. Like, no one recognizes his face. This is a personal situation. You know, this is a personal fact that he did that, which is, I feel so bad because, again, this is, Islam has never teach us, like, to kill people.
All right, well, Saipov out of the operating room, operated on for a gunshot wound from a police officer to his leg, and under arrest. And now the questioning does begin as we search for answers in this, guys. We'll send it back to you.
All right, Rob, thank you very much. Why was in the country? The president just tweeted 10 minutes ago. The terrorists came into our country through what is called the Diversity Visa Lottery Program, a Chuck Schumer beauty. I want merit-based. Then a few minutes later, he followed up with, we are fighting hard for merit-based immigration, no more Democrat lottery systems. We must get much tougher and smarter.
All right, let's bring in the former chairman of Oversight, longtime Congressman, now Fox News contributor, Jason Chaffetz. Congressman, there was a movement by Senator Tom Cotton and Senator David Perdue to get rid of this program in particular, the lottery visa program. Didn't get much steam, but the president included in his immigration reform package. Might there be a bipartisan push for a sober examination of this?
I don't know that it'll be bipartisan, but over the years that I was in Congress, there were a number of people who wanted to get rid of the diversity visa program. But what is the most ridiculous way to pick the next United States citizen? Not on merit, not on family, just literally a lottery. You had one country, I think it was Bangladesh, they took literally everybody on their phone book and put them in for the lottery. And you literally, I mean, coming to the United States is a privilege. But how do you do this? And I see a mugshot. Now, if you're coming here to this country and you've got an arrest record, you should get in. And if you're here and you get arrested, and then kick them out of the country. It's a privilege to be here. Well, you don't need people like that here. And you should get rid of the family. This guy who committed this crime, assuming that he did commit this crime, his entire family should be deported. It's that we're so nice and so politically correct.
Because with this program, you can automatically bring everybody in your family.
Bring in your immediate family.
Migration.
That's right.
And I understand this. Reports now say that he is in the hospital bed and he's gleeful about what he did.
Well, I'm actually glad that they didn't kill him, because I would like to try to extract as much information. He didn't accomplish his goal, which is, you know, to be martyred and killed. But there are lots of things that we should be doing in this country. We didn't learn from the Boston bombing. Remember in the Boston bombing, we had an asylum problem? Not necessarily the case that happened yesterday.
You introduced some legislation.
I did have legislation to say that says, look, if you come to this country claiming asylum and then you go back to your country, guess what? You lose that. But we didn't implement that law, and I tried. I've sponsored it. Doug Collins from Georgia, I think, has that legislation now. It's passed out of the Judiciary Committee, but they should pass that. We have
so it's still active.
It's still active. We have no entry-exit program in this country. When I go down to get a turkey sandwich from my local sub stop, they can tell me the 10th time that I purchased that turkey sandwich.
Right.
If you leave and enter this country,
they can't tell you.
They can't tell you. There's no record. It is current law. That's something that President Trump can do. You should be able to tell who leaves and who comes back into this country, because they're getting radicalized and they're coming back.
Well, when there's a mass shooting, we always hear the Democrats are saying, get rid of the guns. We need gun control. Now, when it's a truck or it's ISIS or it's this visa program, why aren't they screaming we need to get rid of that?
I want every governor in this state to go in front of the cameras today and justify why they give illegal aliens driver's licenses. Because guess what? You can't rent a truck if you don't have a driver's license. Right. So go explain to me why it's a good thing if you're here illegally to give them a driver's license. And if you go and you commit a crime, you're here on a visa and you commit a crime, maybe we should think about that. Maybe we should have an actual discussion about that.
You know, sometimes when things happen, there's an immediate, legitimate response for lawmakers who are consumed with taxes and everything else. Do you think this might go into that category? Where there might be a bipartisan push to, for example, to put on hold this visa lottery program?
I would hope so. Look, Kevin Yoder took over a bill that I had, which is called Fairness for High-Skilled Immigrants. It has something like 290 co-sponsors, but they can't seem to bring it up on the floor of the House. Again, let's focus on economics. Let's go focus on those that have good, strong family ties. And rather than just handing out, literally, by the tens of thousands, lottery tickets to come to the United States for free.
Well, doesn't this particular tragic case make President Trump's suggestion that we need to have a super vetting program more reality?
Yes, and you look at the countries we're talking about places like Libya, and places that they have no. And if you actually go, I've been to many embassies around the world, and you watch the vetting process. Sometimes it's just 10 minutes. It's just a little interview, and you're supposed to get records from these countries that they don't have anything. You're talking about a 20-year-old. They're not going to be in your system. You're not going to have any idea who they are.
So you just have to trust them.
But look, if they come here and they commit a crime, why do we let them stay in this country?
Or how do they become Uber drivers? Everyone in this city relies on Uber.
He passed a background check, they say, but what is the background check?
I don't know.
I want to learn a lot more about this person, why we have a mugshot. And, you know, if he has a mugshot, maybe he wasn't convicted, maybe he was found innocent.
He didn't pay a parking fine. He was a truck driver and had a parking ticket, or not a parking ticket, a vehicle ticket. It was an Uber ticket? That's what our producers... No, okay, never mind. It was a ticket in Missouri, is that right? He was a truck driver.
One of our reporters said that.
He didn't pay the ticket.
So it may have been minor, and you can't... Look, you can lessen the exposure and the vulnerability by doing some simple things, some sober things, and making sure that we have an entry-exit program, that we're bringing people here that have business ties and some skills or have some family ties. And if you do commit a crime, then we've got to get rid of these people. And I worry that in this case, it'll be just like the Boston bombing, because we should have learned at that marathon and taken the lessons from that, from the people who come here by the tens of thousands on asylum, go back and get radicalized. And we have a bill to do that, but they just won't bring it up on the floor of the House and pass it.
Wow.
Frustrating.
Chaffetz, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Great to see you.
Appreciate it.
Coming up, how can we stop terrorists from turning trucks into weapons? Our next guest hunted terrorists for a living, and he says it begins with real security, not PC security.
Good morning to you. We will get back to our top story on the terror attack in New York in just a moment. But first, some other headlines. Former Trump aides accused of conspiring against the United States are considered major flight risks. Newly unsealed court documents show special counsel Robert Mueller restricted travel and bail for Paul Manafort and Richard Gates because of their wealth and international connections. Both men have pleaded not guilty to charges stemming from the investigation into possible Russian meddling in the 2016 election. A parent is shot dead after holding his child's 70-year-old teacher hostage for 6 hours. Police SWAT teams forced to take him down at an elementary school in Southern California. The students at lunch when he arrived evacuated from the school and handed off to their parents. At this point, it's still unclear why the man barricaded himself in the classroom. The teacher has some scrapes and bruises, but will be okay.
It is the latest terror trend, turning vehicles now into weapons. So how does this attack change the way we combat the lone wolves? Our next guest has a few ideas, and he says that it starts with real security, not politically correct security.
Joining us right now, former member of the Israeli Special Counter Operations Terrorism Unit, Aaron Cohen, joins us from L.A. Aaron, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, guys.
We just had Rob O'Neill on, who said the reason this guy who drove a family minivan